Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja. I'm here today with Kyle G from Jetty Rock Foundation. I met Kyle at in New York at the Oyster Master Guild event. Great event, actually, bringing like-minded people together. And I thought Jetty Rock was very interesting. I thought the listeners of the Oyster Ninja podcast would benefit from it. So, Kyle, how's it going, man?
It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So can you tell uh new listeners or new people to Jetty Rock, what is Jetty Rock Foundation?
Yeah, so Jetty Rock Foundation is the nonprofit arm of the Jetty Life clothing brand. So the clothing brand's been around for going on 23 years now, and locally based in Long Beach Island area of New Jersey, coastal, everybody surfs, fishes. Um, that's kind of the tagline of the brand is coastal with a conscience, drawing your own line. And so always had a really community focused charity involvement um, mindset with the brand side. And the catalyst that started the nonprofit was Hurricane Sandy in 2012, which really devastated our area. And Jetty, along with some of the other local nonprofits and folks, kind of banded together to pull together volunteers, resources, different things needed to get people back and operating, in time for summer, which is when we, make most of our money in terms of seasonality. And because of that, needed to form a nonprofit, for legality wise, but also just made sense with where the company was going. And 10 plus years later, I was the first true hire for the nonprofit side as the environmental director. And now 3 years in, and our mission has evolved, but hasn't really changed. Our mission statement is to protect our oceans and waterways and support those who build their lives around them. And what started out as storm relief and community engagement has grown um, a lot on those areas, but then also on the environmental side. So all of our environmental efforts are focused really on oysters and aquaculture, and just highlighting the amazing role that they play, um, not only locally but beyond. So we're super involved in a bunch of different programs. Um, Oyster Master Guild, as you mentioned, being one of them, and we're always looking to expand and grow. And it's just been a really cool journey to for me to become, an oyster person. I wouldn't say that was my normal background or where I thought I'd wind up, but it's been cool, and I'm happy to be involved in this community, and it's been fun.
What did you do before Jetty?
So my previous job was executive director of Alliance for a Living Ocean, so another small nonprofit based on LBI. Been around for almost 30 years. A lot of what they did was more like pollution focused. So, beach cleanups. We helped work to get the legislation passed for a bag ban in New Jersey. Advocating for removing straws, all that different stuff. And that was really cool. And before that, I worked in Philadelphia at the Franklin Institute, and that was kind of my introduction to nonprofit world. I went to school for environmental sustainability, so I have a pretty solid science background, and I specifically marine studies and different things like that. Um, but I wound up just kind of falling into this education and outreach world of nonprofits. And I fish and surf, and my goal is to be on and around the water as much as I can. So, taking a job with a ocean-based nonprofit made a lot of sense for me to, be able to do those things that I love as much as possible. And I was with Alliance for Living Ocean for about 10 years, and then Jetty was looking to hire staff for Jetty Rock, and I've been friends with the guys that run the company for a long time, and just seemed like a really good fit. So. Um, I don't know where I thought I would be when I was in school and that kind of thing, but nonprofit world wasn't at the top of my list. But I'm 15 plus years into it at least, maybe closer to 20 at this point, and I love it. Really enjoy um, teaching, and in that informal method. We do a lot of field trips. We bring a lot of school kids out to the oyster farms, to the research facilities, different things like that, and it's always just been really rewarding to me.
If you had to sum it up, what is environmental sustainability to you?
Um, I mean, for me, it's kind of that cross section where you're thinking about the environment, we're thinking about community and, the people involved in it as well. And then there is also always that economic factor to it. So how can we make all those things work in a way that's beneficial to us, to the actual environment itself? Um, and hopefully along the way, we're still, you know, creating some sort of economy and some jobs out of it. And I think oysters kind of have like a really cool intersectionality there where all those things are happening. Um, there's jobs there, there's the environmental benefits, and I think it's awesome the community that's been built around it. Um, Not only now, but I think there's some major historical um, ties to oysters and communities and just towns and things like that, specifically New Jersey and beyond. So,
I'm not sure if you know, but like, what are some of the historical ties with oysters? Because we always hear like oysters in New York and the Great Oyster, but how do oysters in New Jersey go together? And is there? Well, I'll save that for later. But yeah, what's the history with oysters in New Jersey?
I mean, I think New York probably takes the spotlight, but I think New Jersey was right there with them back in the day, you know. I just from my research and working with all the different groups and things, there was a huge oyster industry, where we are in Barnegat, Great Bay area, down towards Atlantic City as well. And same story, overdevelopment, disease, overharvest, all those things really impacted that industry, to a point that it really didn't exist for, quite a good while. Um, and looking back at the history of it is really cool. I mean, I always tell the story when we talk about oysters. My first oyster was on the AJ Meerwald, which is New Jersey's tall ship. So I think it was like third or fourth grade. We took a class trip down there, and that's an old oyster boat. So it's a big sailing ship, but they do dredging off of it, and they would dredge in the Delaware Bay and pull up some oysters and ask the kids if they wanted to eat them. And we all tried one, and I don't think I even liked it back then, but there's a great tie-in, and there's a lot of tie-ins to our local community as well. There's some, I want to say like third, fourth, fifth generation people that are still doing clams and oysters. Their great grandfathers were like the OGs of it back in the day, and in Tuckerton and these Great Bay areas. So um, it's really cool to see, and it's really cool to see it like coming back now, and it's almost becoming a legitimate industry again, with some major economic ability and room for growth as well.
What I wanted to ask was, as an oyster shucker and being in the oyster community, I think well, there's definitely a taboo with New York oysters because right now they're just helping to clean the water, but I don't feel like oysters from New Jersey get a great spotlight either. I think it's gotten better. Is Cape May, is that New Jersey?
Yeah, Cape May's Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I hear more about oysters from New Jersey, now, but do you know of why or if that is a thing, or is it just me down here closer to the Chesapeake Bay?
No, it's Dirty Jers. We got the nickname, and the water's not always the greatest. I surf, like I said, I surf and I fish, and the water's always got that brown color to it. It doesn't look clean, it doesn't look great, but I mean, some of the Back Bay waters, are some of the cleanest they've been in a really long time. Um, and there are no oyster farms, so where I live, there's a couple farms 3 miles down the road from me right here, and those are the furthest north farms. There's no harvestable waters when you go north of, like I'm in Brick, so Manaloking area, Barnegat Bay. Um, Raritan Bay is what butts up to New York, so that's similar to like what Billion Oysters is facing, where there's no harvestable waters there. And I think most people, when they come to New Jersey, they're flying into Newark, they're seeing that huge industrial center, and it's not the most appealing. So if you associate that with New Jersey, um, you're not going to be that excited to eat something that comes out of those waters. But if you take a visit down this way or the Delaware Bay, and it's that's pretty amazing. I mean, some of the farms down here just have crystal clear water, and the amount of life on them is awesome. So it's definitely a stigma. And when we go do events, whether we're shucking with some of the other farmers or doing different presentations, people definitely you can see a little bit of that stigma. Like I said, they're a little wary of it and unsure. But then once they try the oyster, they love it, and I think that works really well to get rid of that stereotype a little bit for us here in Jersey.
While at Oyster Master Guild, you guys were actually doing some scholarships. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I got to meet Julie and Patrick. I think at I'm drawing a blank on which oyster event it was, but a few years ago, when I started with Jetty Rock and just got to talking to them prior to the start of Oyster Master Guild altogether. And they were mentioning it a little bit. And when it came out, I was one of the early adopters, jumped on board, took level one, and ran into him again at Billy and Oyster the year later and was just talking to him about how much I enjoyed the class and how much I see that sort of education, whether it's for restaurant people, shuckers, just general oyster enthusiasts, as really valuable to, benefiting the work that we're doing, environmentally. And we just started talking about it a little bit, and they threw the idea out of, doing scholarships. And a couple meetings later, we had the framework laid out. And last year we offered 8 students, a full ride for level one. So, I'm drawing a blank on what the cost is, but covered the cost for 8 students, asked them why, tried to pick a diverse range of students from all over. Last year we had students from Australia, all over the United States, I think Canada as well. And then this year I think we had like 4 or 5 different countries represented, as well as a bunch of people from the US and Canada also. Um, and just really great way, to spread awareness. And, I want people to talk about oysters in the best way possible, hold them in the highest light. And I think the Oyster Master Guild program does a really good job of that. So, we're happy to fund that and continue funding it into the future.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What was your presentation on at the Oyster Master Guild?
I sat on a panel about the future. I want to say the future of, I'm drawing a blank now. I think it was the future of like sustainability, or like the future of kind of the environmental aspect of oysters and how we can, um, utilize restaurants, shuckers, different people like that to further, that education. And that really ties into, that Oyster Master Guild message. Learning about oysters and how to shuck them and present them appropriately, talk about them is definitely one part of it. But then knowing how to talk about, those environmental benefits and, all the shell recycling programs that are going on that, the restaurant might participate in or the shucker might be a part of. Um, it just gets people more involved and more immersed in, the world of oysters. And, the more excited you can get people about it, I think the more likely they are to keep coming back. And my whole thing is, the more oysters they're eating, the more shell we're getting for these recycling programs, the more restoration we can do. The farmers are making more money. And, something I always touch on is, for our restoration projects, those farmers are kind of some of our biggest partners. They're always all involved, supporting our restoration projects, whether it's, providing space on their actual farm, lending us the boats or the manpower, using the hatcheries and the nurseries. They're all so intertwined into the restoration. So it's like it's a no-brainer to support the industry side of it as well.
I think my biggest takeaway, well, let me ask you, what was your biggest takeaway from the entire event?
I mean, it was just awesome to see that many people in one room. I mean, like we've chatted back and forth a bunch of times, so to get to meet you finally,
Right.
a handful of people like that. Like I was just joking, like telling people, it's like, oh, I'm going to meet my internet oyster friends. Like I've talked to so many people or had like a call with them or something, just trying to get some information for different programs or ideas and, just building these relationships. And when we go to events like that or Billion Oyster Party, I love just getting to finally meet the people, talk to them in person. And it's always cool to see like there's a really close, tight-knit group of people that are all like-minded and working towards the same goal. And I feel like it's always just really fun too. It's always a good time when everyone gets together, and I look forward to all those events and catching up with everyone, seeing everyone again.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Maybe not so eloquently, but I was gonna say that my big all the panels were great. Don't get me wrong, but it was more so just making those connections. Like so many people I've talked with over the years. Because I don't really get the. I said in my 2025, I was like, I want to do more events and stuff like that, like actually getting out there and meeting people. So like just getting putting a face to the Instagram logo,
Yeah, yeah.
our words. But yeah, it was a great event. It was a game changer, honestly, because I got to see like, how great Julie and Patrick put that together. They made it look easy, but I know it was a bunch of planning behind the scenes,
Yeah.
getting everybody together. Yeah, those are no easy tasks.
No, they're really good at it. That's part of why I love working with them. I mean, they're so on top of everything. They pick up all the little details. I mean, just the presentation and everything about the event, the location, all about it. Just it felt very, very well done.
Mhm.
If you're not familiar with it and you were there for the first time or that was your first glimpse in Oyster Master Guild, I would think you walk away pretty impressed and um thinking there's something very substantial there going on. So it's cool.
Yeah. Far as Jetty Rock, what do you think? What's your goal for 2025 and beyond?
I mean, each year has been to grow our environmental footprint as much as we can. Like I said, we kind of have three pillars that we work off of. Storm relief is still one of them, being that's where we were founded. We still donate and support the community directly. And then environmental is kind of the one area where we've always done as much as we can, but it's takes a lot more work to find the projects and to find the opportunities to donate to. And part of it is, just finding shovel-ready projects in New Jersey isn't the easiest thing. Overcoming just regulatory hurdles to, restoration projects means, we might have a project on the books that, we want to fund, but it's not going to happen for 5 years or something like that.
Mm,
So this year, we're going to continue supporting two recycling programs. So we started the first municipally ran one in Long Beach Township. So there's about 15 to 20 restaurants. We recycle roughly 40 tons of shell a year. Um, Hopefully this year, some of that shell is going to go back into a living shoreline project in the town. So we'll be involved with that as much as we can be. And then the state runs a program through the Department of Fish and Wildlife and New Jersey DEP. And they just got a really big grant last year that we're underwritten into. So we'll be assisting them expanding shell recycling through most of South Jersey. Um, and then, we're a funder, and then we also help support, it's called a coastal project. So it's one that really ties right into that idea of, the farmers helping with the restoration. So it's a USDA NRCS funded program that the farmers take spat on shell and grow it out on their farm lease throughout the season. And then at the end of the year, we take it off the lease, put it onto two of our research sites. Um, and then they get paid for that work. So, funding the farmers to do a little bit extra work, but getting them to use their lease sites as grow out. So when we're putting this spat on shell out onto these restoration reefs, it's got a head start. It's a little bit bigger. Otherwise, we usually just do straight spat on shell that's really small, and we're hoping the survivorship's going to be higher. So this will be year two of that one. There's 8 farmers participating, and just a really cool program. And then, same stuff, really trying to support Oyster Master Guild again, whatever events we can do in that sense. And, we're always open to additional projects, additional programs, supporting people that we can throughout the year. We're working closely with the Aquaculture Innovation Center in New Jersey as well, which is a state-run hatchery, and hopefully providing some materials and funds to them so that they can expand a little bit, provide more services to farmers. Yeah, I mean, I like to work with as many people as I can. try to get my hands on, into every project we can. And, the biggest thing for me is not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's so much awesome work already happening. And I'm in a lucky position to be at an organization where we can just help fund that work further. Or we can help to promote it, amplify the message, lend design help, different things like that. We're willing to help people out, wherever they need it. But yeah, we just want to promote as much good work as we can.
That's awesome. Could you speak a little bit? Because it's crazy. I did a class last night, just last night, and one question that always comes up, so I think this will be beneficial for the listeners, is what does shell recycling look like?
Our shell recycling programs are, like I said, one's state ran, one's municipally ran. There's also, I think there's two more in the state right now. One up in Hoboken that is also municipally ran, and then American Littoral Society runs one kind of in like northern New Jersey counties. And most of them just work, directly with restaurants. So it's a lot of outreach communication, getting restaurants on board and kind of letting them know the benefits of shell recycling for them, removing, tons and tons of material from their waste stream, which is beneficial to them just by that weight savings. Um, and then, kind of getting that environmental messaging out to them as well. And then, the logistics of it. So, having a truck, having a trailer, having all the cans, buckets, bushels, whatever you need to collect it, making sure someone's monitoring it so that there's not trash, spoons, cocktail forks, all that good stuff in there. And then we try to do a really good job, and I know the state does a good job as well of just collecting data. So each time Long Beach Township picks up, they record how much they're taking from each restaurant. I know Billy and Oyster does a really good job too. So we keep really, detailed statistics of how much shell we're getting back. And then the shell is collected, taken to a site, depending on the program, where it can cure for up to 6 months, or at least 6 months. Kind of the unspoken rule to let it cure for 6 months, so any bacteria or pathogens aren't going to find their way back into the water. Most of what we get is probably local oysters, but these restaurants are shucking West Coast, East Coast, European, Canadian, all different types of stuff. So we don't want to spread any biofouling or pathogens into our waters that could have some potentially negative impacts. And from there, it's hangs out for a bit, and then we kind of decide where it's going to go. DEP project reseeds the Mullica River, which is one of those historic oyster sites. Um, and so that's reseeding wild beds in that river. So they just put down shell. There's no spat on it. And then the township program, multiple uses. Some of it went to that coastal project where it became spat on shell. And some of it this year will go towards a living shoreline project to protect some bay islands that are, going to mitigate flooding and wave issues like that. That's kind of the full circle of it. And then, in between that, we're trying to do outreach and education, explaining to restaurant goers and different people why it's important. Having like some oyster happy hours, different things like that to talk it up. And it's a invaluable resource, and um, it's a hot commodity. Like there's probably never enough of it. Everybody always wants it for something. So the more we can recycle, the more restaurants we can get on board, the further we can expand these programs, the better for sure.
So what does that living shoreline project look like? Is it just like dumping shells on the shorelines to help with erosion, or what is that?
So there's usually like some engineering involved and, combination of oyster castles, wave
Mm,
attenuation, like
got you.
structures. A lot of times the shell is bagged, sometimes there'll be spat on shell. It depends on, how tidal the zone is, if it's going to be underwater enough. Um, but yeah, usually try to, contain the shell in some way before putting it out there, just so it doesn't all kind of float away or get buried. Um, different resources for different things. Um, Yeah, I mean, the goal is to, yeah, stop erosion. Some of these Bay Islands are obviously subsiding because they're just peat moss that's packed on top of each other. And then, wave action just slowly eats away at it. So, the oysters and the shell and the bags and that kind of thing is one option. And then I know there's a lot of research going on for like rib mussels as well, which is another one that's like very, very good at shoreline stabilization, um, and has no, not much food value. People aren't going to be harvesting them and eating them. So
Hmm.
I think that the state a lot of times likes that. Less worry of people plucking wild oysters off of it. So
Right. And did I see you guys actually make clothing out of the shells or?
Jetty brand has what we call Oystex. So it's recycled polyester with oyster shells that are ground up into it, and the oyster shells actually add some like antimicrobial, anti-odor characteristics to it. So it's actually there are a few other brands doing similar things, but um, out in Taiwan they have like crazy abundance of oyster shell from their industry. So a government grant to figure out ways to utilize it, and this was one of the things that they came up with. So pretty cool tie-in for the brand to what we do in terms of work. All of our shell, what we do and what we are working on is putting more oysters back in the water. Um, and then that's overseas, and they're taking some of those shells and diverting them into some recycled materials for clothing and different things like that.
Pretty cool, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, how can people help out with Jetty Rock? Like the normal, if you want to donate or come
Yeah.
out to event.
You can always come out to all our events. Our event schedule is always up on our website. The events are super fun. We just had Arctic Outreach this last weekend, which is a good time. Drinks, music, food. There's some oysters, all that good stuff. All raising funds that go, right back into our community. In June, we have Hop Sauce Festival, which is beer, hot sauce, and original live music. Really, really good time also. And all these events are charitable, raise, upwards of, 50, 100,000 plus dollars that go right back into our mission. If you can't make the events, you can become a member. So we have our crew membership. You get a t-shirt, you get a sticker, you get some discount codes to shop at Jetty, and some other perks as well. You can make just a general donation. And then if you are local, you can always volunteer too. We're always looking for help in that way. If you have a business and you're corporate, you can sponsor our events or sponsor some of our programming. Any way you want to get involved, we're happy to work with people and find a way. We appreciate all the support we get. We can't do the work that we do without the support we have, and we're super thankful for all the people that come out to our events, volunteer, donate, all of it. It's awesome to see.
Well, I really appreciate your time. And I only got one more question. Do you think that first oyster on the boat kind of steered you toward the where you're at now? Or was there another moment in your life that kind of like, you know what? I want to deal with sustainability, environmental sustainability.
That was probably one of many things that did. I mean, like, just growing up loving fishing, surfing, being in the ocean and the water is really what got me where I am today. The more time I can spend on the water on my boat, doing things like that, the happier I am. And, that was definitely one of them. And then, we released a movie probably 6, 7 years ago called The Oyster Farmers. And that was my first intro to kind of local Jersey oysters again. And I'm also a photographer, so I did some of the underwater filming for that film and got to know some of the farmers through that project. And I feel like that was kind of the more recent, like, uh, catalyst for where I am today. A lot of those relationships are still ones that we have, and you know, it's so much more in depth now than it was back then, That got me connected to the local farmers. I started getting oysters from them, and when I started getting them, I was a horrible shucker. I'd get like 2 dozen. It would take me like an hour to open them. They're probably the most disgusting looking things you've ever seen. And just from working with them more and more, I've I wouldn't say I'm a professional shucker, but I'm pretty good now. I can hold my own. So something that I've worked on, and just another skill when I'm around all these guys at these events doing all these oyster shucking events. I'm like, I guess I got to learn this too.
I'm gonna put you in the hot seat real quick. What's the best oyster in your opinion? It could be from New Jersey if you want, but I just want like, what's your best oyster you've had?
Oh, the best oyster. That's a tough one. I got a bunch of favorites. I mean,
Okay.
one of my favorites, I'll go, I love NC Oyster Co's Dukes of Topsail. One of my favorites from the South. My favorite from Jersey is Sloop Points. So they're just down the street from me. The farmer's like lives a few blocks over, and the farm is super close. But they're one of the more unique oysters come out of Jersey. Usually, when you get a Jersey oyster, they're like salt forward, super briny. Where he grows them and how he grows them, he's got like a little more like creamy, sweet, complex flavor going on. That's awesome. And then I love a lot of oysters from Maine. I don't know, take a lot of trips up there and love point oysters up there. Yeah, Maine oysters are good too. I like all oysters. I don't know. I'm not too picky.
Well, I appreciate your time, man, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Uh,
Absolutely.
this was a very fun and very informative conversation about Jetty Rock and the great things you guys are doing in New Jersey. And I see on the site you guys have raised like over, was it, I guess, a 10-year span? You raised over $2.45 million.
Yeah. So with this past Arctic outreach just on Saturday, we haven't like crunched the numbers fully, but we should easily be over 2.5 this after this event, which is
Amazing.
really cool. So we'll definitely be touting that stat and something we're super proud of. So we're just gonna keep going.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I wish you much success and much luck. And hopefully I'll see you soon at another oyster event.
Yeah, absolutely.